painters. Storytelling doesn't have to be about the drama emerges when you slow down and notice just the details of your imagination and what is there in front of you. In this sense, writing is no different from painting or drawing. The best way to make something creative out of your everyday and what is around you is to carry a notebook with you wherever you go. After all, the best way to learn how to write is to write. In this domestic course, you'll
Лучший
find
способ научиться жить этого, что надо делать?
discover the
Надо говорить о жизни, думать о жизни.
precise words to describe the
Надо
world.
писать о жизни, жить
And
его.
the final part,
Да, надо думать о жизни вслух, всерьез про себя.
The ambitious music students in their pursuit for musical knowledge travel far and wide in search of more exotic and dramatic sounding scales. For many, their journey ends when they discover Phrygian dominant, the fifth mode of harmonic minor.
Hey, I'm Jake Lizio, and in this video, we're going to be exploring one of my favorite scales, Phrygian dominant. We're going to go through the theory on how do we build the scale, how do we the chord. I'm also going to give examples of where we've heard this in popular music, but more importantly, we're going to be talking a lot in this video on how do we use the scale, how do we be musical with it. So before you start this video, I do have two videos you should probably watch first. I have one on the Phrygian scale, I also have one on harmonic minor, and those two are going to go through the concepts of what is a mode, and they're also going to explain the harmonic minor scale. So I really do strongly recommend those as prerequisite videos to this one, but even if you don't know much theory, as long as you know this scale, you can actually make a lot of awesome sounding music right out of the gate. So let's get started. A Phrygian dominant scale can be thought of as just a Phrygian scale, but we've taken that third note and we've just sharped it. So now it is a natural third or a major third as opposed to a minor third. And if I want to do that in the key of E, that would give me the notes E, F, G sharp, A, B, C, D, and E. Down those same exact notes. Now you can hear, just by going up and down, I start to get an idea of what the scale can really feel like. Even with just the tiniest embellishment, maybe just a hammer on top or on the bottom, you should start hearing that this has a very, very ethnic, exotic, foreign flavor to it. So our first application of the scale will literally just be going up and down. But what I like to do is I like to pedal on my root note. So have our low note sustained, that's my E, I'll just keep finger picking that with my thumb, and then at the same time, I'll just start going up the notes of that E Phrygian dominant. And you can hear, you get a really nice flavor out of that, as opposed to just going up and down the scale without having a drone pedal note on the bass. And hopefully that should kind of evoke that imagery of the Middle East, and that's not a coincidence. I mean, this is a Middle Eastern scale. It's an essential scale in Arabic music. It's known as Hijaz. And we hear it in Turkey, we hear it in Egypt, we hear it in Indian music as well. A lot of Carnatic music has this idea of a low droned note with the scale being played on top, just like this. Now, I cannot play the piano, but I have never let that stop me from playing the piano. The cool thing about the piano is that if you're not like good at the instrument, as long as you know the basics, you can at least be musical with it. So I'm going to take the same idea and I'm just going to put it onto the piano. I'll drone with my left hand some low E notes. With my right hand, I'll just kind of go up and down this Phrygian dominant scale, and it's going to sound wonderful. Now, we really don't need any more theory just to start writing riffs with this. In fact, some of the songs that I'm going to give you here don't include any chords at all. It's just the idea of going up and down the scale. For example, The Offspring has a song called Come Out and Play, and it's just the first 5 notes of the scale with a little bend in it. Also in progressive rock and metal, Dream Theater writes a lot of songs in Phrygian dominant. Here's an example from the song In the Name of God. And Tool as well. The song example I'm going to give you here is 46 and 2, where basically... basically just in D Phrygian dominant on the bass. But we'll talk about that song a little bit later. Right now, I want to figure out what chords are we allowed to play in Phrygian dominant. If I start on my first note and I try to build triads off of it, I can get an E major triad. I'm also allowed to build an F major triad off the second note. Off the third note, I can make a G full diminished. Off the fourth note, I can make an A minor. My 5 chord would be a B half diminished or a B full diminished. My 6 chord is a C augmented, and my 7 chord is going to be just regular old minor. Now, all these chords are playable in the key, but the ones that I suggest you focus on are the 1 and that 2, the flat 2. So E to F, you should be able to hear there's so much tension just between those 2 chords. I also really like using that flat 7 chord, the D minor, in this case. So just by using those 3 chords, in my opinion, that's really all you need to develop that nice Phrygian dominant sound. So maybe just give it a Latin strumming pattern. Here's my E, here's my F, D minor, that, E, an F, and then D minor again, to resolve back to E. Now remember how we were pedaling over E earlier on? Let's do the same thing here. Let's take my E chord, and instead of playing a full F, let's just keep E on the bass, but have an F on top of it. So we have an F major over E. And that to me is like all you need to know about Phrygian dominant right there. That entire feel develops very well just between those 2 chords, pedaled over an E. And that sound is very reminiscent of like the fake flamenco that I do. A lot of times I'll do like just an E major and then slide it over to an F position, and you get an F major 7, sharp 11 over E. And if you surround that with the notes of Phrygian dominant, so I've got like an E and then the notes of the scale, you get that cool, like, flamenco sound. You know, it's my fake flamenco. I'm not actually a flamenco player. I know a little Spanish guitar, but if I have to fake it, this is what I go to. It's just my Phrygian dominant scale. Now, one of my favorite usages of Phrygian dominant is as a lead device, something to write a lead line or a guitar solo with. So I'm going to give you 3 or 4 examples and ideas that I'd like to consider when I'm using a scale like this, and then I'm going to wrap them all together and put them into a little guitar solo here for you. So the first idea I want you to think about is using arpeggios. As a lead player, I really like to arpeggiate the chord that's underneath. It helps me highlight the notes there. So for example, if my jam track is going to be playing an E major, I want to be thinking about using the notes of an E major as a lead player on top of that. And if the chord's playing F, I want to be thinking about using the notes of an F arpeggio. However, let's spice up our F a little bit. If I look at the notes I'm allowed to play, I can play more than just an F major. I can play an F major with a sharp 4. And I really like sharp 4s, that's a tritone. So I really like to add that into my arpeggios. What I've decided to do, and make it a little slidey, is instead of playing my arpeggio and kicking through it, I'm going to just slide through this arpeggio and make it a little bit more legato. Also, diminished 7th arpeggios. I love diminished 7th arpeggios. I did a whole video on them. And since I have a full diminished 7th chord in my key, I'm going to use that to my advantage and use these nice little diminished shapes. And even if it might not fit in, even if I'm not playing a diminished chord, let's still play the arpeggio on top. It sounds nice if I got this low E and this climbing diminished on top of it. Also, pedal point can also mean returning to a note. It doesn't mean always a pedaling tone or something's underneath it. So in Phrygian dominant, if I keep returning to a specific note, like E, my tonic, I can come up with a cool way to play Phrygian dominant like that by constantly pedaling to my open E string. And I get some really neat little guitar lines like this. I also have an open B string, and B is a really important note in my E major chord. That's the 5th. So I could play through Phrygian dominant and pedal to the note B just like this on my 2nd string. That's a cool idea as well. Now in the solo here, what I decided to do is do it like polymetrically. We're in 4/4, but I wanted to do like a 10-note phrase. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it kind of left me in between the measures. And then eventually I was able to sync back up with the 4/4. You really can't go wrong with just by going up and down the scale. This is such a flavorful scale, and I think that's really unique about Phrygian dominant. If you go up and down Dorian, you know, not a lot of flavor is going to develop if there's no context. You really need the chords behind it for the Dorian scale to sound unique. But Phrygian dominant, just by going up and down, all that color and all that flavor starts coming out of it. So why not just go up and down the scale if you're in the middle of a solo? It's going to sound pretty good. And last but not least, I want to bring back the drone idea on my open E string by letting that open E string ring out as I'm playing E Phrygian dominant on the other strings. And you hear that gives me a really nice, like, imitation sitar sound. So if I take all these ideas and throw them together on top of the jam track, here's what it's going to sound like. improvising over these different exotic tracks. Now, if this is all new stuff to you, I just want to warn you about musical malpractice. This is such an easy scale to use, and it sounds so cool when you first discover it. It's easy to overdo it. So I do recommend learning to dilute all of the real dramatic power of the scale. A good example of that is in the song 46 and 2 by Tool. The riff is in Phrygian dominant, but after just a few measures, the guitars come in with a flat 3 instead of a natural 3. By bringing in that flat 3 instead of the natural 3, it really kind of tampers down the dramatic nature of this scale, and then they go right back to it in the following measure. So my advice is, learn to use this stuff sparingly, maybe doing sections in Phrygian dominant, or just little riffs in Phrygian dominant before you go back to a parallel minor or a parallel or a related minor scale as well. But it can be a little much if you do entire sections in Phrygian dominant, so just watch out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do like videos like this and you want to see more, you can consider supporting my Patreon page. These lessons really wouldn't exist if it weren't for the fine folks over there who have subscribed to me. But if you can't do that, I understand. Just like, comment, favorite, all that kind of stuff helps me out. I will see you next time.
Ничего, мозг себе добавь, скажи, да ведь?
Добавь себе мозги, да ведь? И все в этом все деловки. Ну нет, я так думаю.
Hello Internet, so nice to see you. Today we see how to make music with the Phrygian scale. Now, the A Phrygian scale is made by the notes A, B flat, C, D, E, F, G. This scale is a mode of the F major or the D minor scale, meaning that this scale has the same note as the F major scale or the D minor scale. The difference between F major and A Phrygian is that in A Phrygian, A is our tonic note. A is the main note that our ear uses as a reference point. So usually we're going to use the chord built on this A note to start and end our chord progressions. Now, as usual, the best way to hear the scale is not just to play it up and down, but to harmonize it, that is, to build the chord inside the scale. So, on the A note, I can build the A minor chord, A, C, E. On the B flat note, I can build the B flat major chord, B flat, D, F. On C, I can build a C major chord, C, E, G. On D, I can build a D minor chord, D, F, A. On E, I can build an E diminished triad, E, G, B flat. On F, I can build an F major triad, F, A, C. And on G, I can build a G minor triad, G, B flat, D. If I compare the Phrygian scale with the more common A natural minor scale, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I see that the only note of difference is this B flat note in A Phrygian. This note of difference creates a difference in three chords because the chords in A minor are A minor, B diminished, C, D minor, E minor, F, G. So there are three chords of difference. This B flat rather than B diminished, this E diminished rather than E minor, and this G minor rather than G major. This also means that somewhere in our chord progression we want to play one of those three chords, otherwise our chord progression will sound exactly like a chord progression in natural minor. And what's the point of using A Phrygian if it sounds like natural minor? All our chord progression in A Phrygian will start and end with A minor to make sure that you hear A as the tonic note. The most typical chord progression is A minor, B flat. You can play those two chords as they are. But you can also do something different. You could play A minor and then play a hybrid chord that is half A minor and half B flat. So for instance, we can have this hybrid here where I keep the two lowest strings with the A minor notes and the top three strings with the B flat major notes. Or if you don't like the sound of this E note here, you can just keep the bass of A and so play A minor and B flat with the bass of A. Or instead, I can keep fixed the bass and the highest note of A minor. Or I can do completely the opposite. I'm gonna keep the upper part of A minor and change the lower part to follow B flat. So for instance, I can have this kind of hybrid here, when the top three strings keep the A minor notes and the bottom two change to B flat. Or instead you can do this. There are so many variations with the same general Phrygian emotion, but with different nuance. Now, knowing the chord, it's easy. Knowing effective positions for the chords and how to connect them and how to make them sound good, it's harder. If you have a minute, I recommend you check out the complete chord mastery guitar course that teaches you exactly how to do that, taking a chord progression and making it sound good on your guitar. If you don't like the B flat major chord or you get tired of using it, then instead you can use the G minor chord. So you can play the chord progression A minor, G minor. Here I'm going to play it keeping the bass of A. Another interesting chord that is underexplored is this E diminished triad. But rather than using the triad, why don't we use the seventh chord? If I put together the notes E, G, B flat, and D, I get an E minor 7 flat 5. This chord can also be inverted as a G minor 6th or a G minor / E depending on what note you put in the bass. So for instance, if I play A minor and then I follow with E minor 7 flat 5 with the bass of A, I have this chord progression. I can then connect this chord, for instance, with the B flat / A chord I had before.
Ah, é.
The C chord in the A Phrygian scale sounds really similar to the A minor chord and gives us no problem. The D minor chord and the F chord though may give us a problem because again, the A Phrygian scale has the same note as D minor and F major. So if you play them in the wrong moment, your ear may switch hearing the whole chord progression in D minor or in F major, spoiling the Phrygian effect. But in the case of the Phrygian scale, this is quite easy to fix. If you play a D minor, don't use D minor in root position, use it in second inversion, that is D minor with a bass of A, coming or going to A minor. If you do that, the D minor sound will be quite weak and you will still hear A as the tonic of your scale. So for instance, I can play A minor, D minor / A, B flat / A, A minor. about F? Well, F, paradoxically, it's not really a problem because we are really used to chord progression and go from A minor to F. And so even if we add other Phrygian chords, we still hear it in A, not in F. So unless you play something that definitely points you to F, like for instance if you play C7 then F, the F chord is not a problem. How about lead playing? Well, in the previous video on the Lydian sound we found some interesting tricks that we could use to play a Lydian solo. But we don't have in Phrygian the same nice tricks that we found in Lydian. Playing a Lydian Phrygian, it's not really hard if you know what you're doing. But there are a few gotchas here and there, and those can't really be explained effectively and meaningful in just a few minutes. I mean, unless you want me to say just use your ears, but that's not really great advice. Now, this is like when your friend gives you dating advice, you know, just be yourself. It's true, it is the right way of doing it, and it's also pretty useless in that moment because it gives you no practical pointer. So, for a good explanation that actually tells you how to solo in Phrygian, I have to recommend you to my course, Master of the Modes. Master of the Modes is not a book, it's a complete video course that teaches you all the ins and outs of scales and modes on guitar. How they're made, how to play them, how to use them in a solo, how to combine them, and how to switch between them, and in general, how to improvise over any kind of chord progression. Hey, to be honest, Master of the Modes will probably not get you any date, but it will help you making sense of scales and modes on your guitar. If you have a minute, click on the link on the top right and check out Master of the Modes. If you like this video, smash that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and especially click on notification, otherwise YouTube will not let you know when I put up a new video. And if you have any idea, comments, nice to see you. Today we talk about the Dorian mode. Now Dorian is a very common mode. It's used everywhere. It can be used in thousands of different ways. So here we have to limit ourselves only to a few examples, otherwise this video will be incredibly long. Now the Dorian scale is made by the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, sharp, G. It's very similar to an A natural minor scale, except for the sixth note, that is an F sharp rather than an F. This F sharp is a natural sixth, not a sharp sixth. Because if we were to compare this to a major scale, the sixth note will be an F sharp already, so we need to put the natural sign, not the sharp sign, to take it back from the flat 6 that is in the minor scale. This is one of those little quirks of music notation that can be incredibly confusing, but the only thing we're doing here is to take an A minor scale and then moving the F note to an F sharp instead. If you get confused between a sharp sixth, a natural sixth, etc., just say a raised sixth, and then there is no confusion. Anyway, this F sharp note is the heart of Dorian because it's the only note of difference from the A minor scale, and this note can create some lovely dissonances too. You see, for instance, that this F sharp note is dissonant with the C note because those two notes form a triton. As usual, the best way to understand a scale is to harmonize it. So let's see what kind of chords we can build on A Dorian. On the first note, I can build an A minor chord, A, C, E, or an A minor 7th chord, A, C, E, G. On the second note, I can build a B minor chord, B, D, F sharp, or a B minor 7th chord, B, D, F sharp, A. On the third note, I can build a C major, C, E, G, or a C major 7, C, E, G, B. On the fourth note, I can build a